guys, this is Doug, and you're listening to What's the Hazard? It is Friday, August 5th, and I know this because tomorrow is Saturday, August 6th, which is my 28th anniversary.
Congrats.
28th, thank you very much.
Congrats on remembering.
Yeah, for remembering. I know. I know. And it's interesting because as I age and start to forget things, there are certain things I cannot forget. You know, I don't want to forget. So, what was I saying? So, yeah, Tanya and I have been married 28 years tomorrow.
That's
good for you, man.
Yeah. And she doesn't age, and I look like my grandfather. So what the hell is going on with that?
I don't think I know anybody 28 years.
Exactly. It's pretty impressive. I'm actually pretty impressed. Also, I just do want to say thanks to Jamie Lemberg and all the folks out at Hurrdat Manufacturing. Aaron and I went out there for a tour.
Impressive.
Earlier this week was awesome, wasn't it?
That was fun. That was fun.
Are you a gun person, buddy?
Am I what?
Gun person?
No, I am not. I'm not against them, but I don't own any.
Okay, because Hurrdat Manufacturing is an ammunition manufacturer out in Grand Island. They're one of my clients, and hopefully they will be one of our clients.
Sure.
From a leadership standpoint, where you've been talking about maybe doing some leadership stuff for them. But the facility is really amazing. Great people. I think it's a good employer.
It's family owned. It's amazing that it's family owned still, and
still family owned. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that Jamie was telling us was that I think the city officials for a while were questioning the value of Hurrdat to the community. And so Jason, who I think is a friend of yours,
correct,
the son of the owner, came up with an idea where he actually is the largest purchaser of $2 bills in like the United States circulation. And so once a year, he will buy, $100,000 worth of $2 bills.
he gives every employee $100 worth of $2 bills.
Gives every employee, 1,000 employees,
Oh, wow.
$100 worth of $2 bills, and then asks them to go out and pump them into the community.
Oh,
So
For
the
what
community
reason?
can see the impact that Hurrdat is having on the community.
got it.
I thought that was brilliant.
And
That
he
is
instructs them to all go out to dinner and
Yeah.
pay with the $2
Use
bills.
these $2 bills to go out and buy something. You get a bonus, and I don't care what you do with your bonus, but I want you to take these $2
That is
bills out there into
brilliant.
the community.
I will say, like, if I ever go valet my car, I will tip in $2 bills because they remember you.
Really?
They always remember you. And then when they come back, you get like special treatment. They love them. For
That's-
some reason, they love them.
That's a great idea. So where do you get them?
Well, you can get them from a bank.
You can
From
ask
bank,
for them.
yeah.
You would have to
Yeah,
ask for
yeah.
them specifically. Well, that brings me to my guest. We have a very, very special guest today. We started this program 3 years ago, and it was intended to be kind of a tribute to mentors, okay? And electronic mentoring to people that may not have the opportunity to work directly with a mentor. You know, I mean, there are a lot of safety and health folks out there that are on their own. And so we thought this might be an opportunity to share some stuff with them. And so you are one of the reasons that this podcast exists, because Leanne Meyer, formerly my boss and mentor, taught me a lot about this environmental safety and health stuff. And so it is great to have you on the program.
So fun to be here.
And you are driving, so you were just going to be in town for literally a few hours.
Exactly.
And so this has probably altered your schedule slightly,
Barely.
But-
it's
but
so
to the
fun
benefit
be
of the
here.
listeners. So thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
being here.
Thanks
And
for having me.
I will stop talking here momentarily. But you were my boss at Terracon. So I was working for the DOD as an industrial hygienist out in Ohio. You had taken the job with Terracon Consultants as regulatory compliance manager.
Yep.
And you called me and said, would you be willing to come back here? And
Please come to Omaha.
I think actually what happened was my mom asked you to call me and give me a job or something like that, right? Get me back in town. But
Can you get him out of our basement, please?
exactly. Please do something. Employ him gainfully, please. But that was many, many years ago. You have done many, many things since then. And you have recently retired.
Good for
Can
you.
Believe it.
It's
I can't
amazing.
Believe it. Yeah.
But I mean, you have had big jobs in the
Mhm.
EHS world. Scary jobs to me. I look at what you have been doing and it terrifies me. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done, where you've been? I mean,
Sure, absolutely.
would you please?
So I started out in training wise, at school, college, as a petroleum engineer. And so every summer, and I will say this was probably the most challenging job of my life, was every summer during petroleum engineering days, you go work in the oil fields, right? And so this is back in the 80s when they never worked with a female in their lives. These are roughnecks, roustabouts, drillers, welders, that kind of thing. So,
and you show up on the job.
And I show up on the job. And, honestly, when they would hire me, they would contact the field and say, you can only get in a truck with these people. You're not allowed to get in a truck with anybody else. I mean, that was scary in and of itself, right? So it was a different day. It was a different day back then. And so I worked out in the oil fields and loved every second of it, learned more than I can even tell you. Not so much learning technical things and oil field things, but learning about life, just learning life values. And it was amazing. It was scary. It was fun. It was everything. Learn how to kill rattlesnakes, learn how to handle tarantulas, all those kinds of fun things. But then I went on to be a petroleum engineer, went back to school, got a master's into the environmental, it was radiation physics, which took me into environmental, which took me into safety. So then, so I've worked in oil and gas, upstream, midstream, downstream, transmission, to the final mile. So it's been just so blessed to have seen it all through the environmental health and safety, and the compliance, all regulatory compliance, really, all through all those eyes. Because, when I first came on, I worked for Amoco for a while. And when I first came on to Amoco, I think our environmental division had 20 people. And when I left.
For the entire company, Amoco?
Yeah. When I left, there was over 500 people in just environmental in a few years. So it just, that was when the regulations were exploding and we realized we got to clean up some stuff we've done in the past and that whole thing. So, I mean, it's been amazing journey, and to be able to say that I'm finished is, now I just want to go out and have some fun and get some gigs as far as let me go teach people stuff and let me go talk to, train, do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you will be a great addition to our leadership training team. We might just get away from safety entirely and just do leadership training because I've surrounded myself with leadership experts. But you said something interesting because it is a very male-dominated field. Petroleum engineering.
Yes.
Environmental engineering, EHS at a corporate level, certainly.
Right. And when I went back and got my master's in radiation physics, it was all male. And it wasn't intentional to go into a male dominated field by any means, but that's where my skills were. That's kind of where my wheelhouse was. That's where how my brain works. But it was interesting, and not just on my part, but on their part, like going out in the oil fields and having these men having to work with a female, which they've never had to. They didn't know how to act or behave. Their wives didn't know how to act or behave because they've never had to deal with that, So it was, and it's small town, not any knock on small town, but it was just not, a huge metropolis where you're involved male, female all the time. Right. So I just learned to handle myself and sensitivities and, I had to get thick skin pretty quick, really quick, that kind of thing. So, everybody freaked at the beginning, and by the end of the summer, we were having a blast.
Everybody was cool at that point, or at least, I mean, you still weren't getting in the truck with some of those guys.
No,
obviously.
I still wasn't allowed.
Right.
I wasn't even allowed in the break room for an entire summer. They would go back to the break room because it was air conditioned. And I had my lunch out on a rock, sitting on a rock in the hot sun in West Texas.
Right. Really?
Was not allowed in the break room.
And this was early 80s, probably mid 80s, perhaps, something like that.
Now, do you find is the industry still like that, or is it a lot more? I don't want to use the word integrated. That's really not the right word, but
it's still male dominated in most areas. It's, I feel badly because in the oil and gas world, they are hiring females, but it's trying to get the females to want to work there. Right. So I don't hold this against any corporation. They're not opposed to it.
They just want
at all.
talented
In fact,
people.
They're looking for that.
It's just not a field women are interested in.
Well, so many women don't go into that field, so it's hard to find.
Well, who really wants to work in an oil field anyway?
Well, it's pretty fun.
It takes a certain person to want to do that to begin with.
But it's hard work.
It is very hard work, and it's a lot of it was manual labor, and a lot of it is filthy dirty, and you go home smelling like asphalt sometimes.
Sure. So do you feel, and I don't want to get too off topic, I mean, do you feel you had made the comment, you don't fault those companies or trying, but do you feel it should be forced? Like, you kind of feel like, okay, we gotta make this happen. We got to force people into these positions, and it's kind of square peg round hole feeling sometimes.
Right. No, it's a great question and so controversial. And I don't feel like a quota is a quota and we have to meet it no matter what. I feel like let's give the best person for that job the job. I really do.
What could change professional women's opinion of the field? Is it changing? Are there more people that are being?
It is changing,
drawn?
but when these oil and gas companies put their numbers out, they're including human resources and accounting and IT and things where there are many females,
Sure.
right? They're not including the engineers or the people who work. Well, they're including them, but it really,
it's not reflective of that side of the business, truthfully.
it kind of contaminates the whole number when you look at it like that.
Right.
So I don't think that there's a lot out in the field. And I do still think that there's some harassment in the field just due to the people, but it's so much less than it was just because now they're trained, right? Now it's like, okay, we have to do sexual harassment training. We have to do this and we have to do that. And so they're aware and they don't want to get in trouble. And now I think it's just much, I think it's a lot more inviting to females than it was in the past.
Good. So you are really smart. I've always found you to be remarkably bright. And part of the reason I say that is because I started petroleum engineering at Tulsa too, and I dropped out. And then you came down there. And, in the interest of total transparency, we are family to some degree. We share common family people in our lives.
Your brother is married to my sister.
Yes. And so I was down at Tulsa. You are much younger than I, obviously, for people watching on YouTube. And I started in petroleum engineering, and then I was like, holy shit, this is really hard. And then you came down there and breezed through it.
Wow, I wouldn't say breezed.
What else you got? And and then later when you hired me, I have to admit, I was amazed. I knew you were bright. That's not what I'm implying, but the quality that I found most interesting was, and I will describe you in one word, fearless. You were fearless. And I don't know if that is something that you just have to project in order to survive in that world, or are you truly fearless? I mean, no project intimidated you. None of the people at Terracon intimidated you. I used to walk by Hartwell and he would say, "Morning, Don." And I'd go, "Oh, Mr. Hartwell said," and you'd walk by and tell him, "I'm doing this and this. And if you don't like it, shut up." I mean, where did that come from?
So so when I was a kid, from stunts and motorcycle driving and skiing and that, I've been fearless for that reason. I don't know why. I just didn't think I was mortal. I just didn't know. I just didn't get it. So I would try anything. But from a professional, I'll tell you the day it changed. And that was in the oil fields. Like I said, I learned a lot about myself, about the environment, about everything, humanity. Day one, out in the oil fields, I get in the truck with the people I'm supposed to get in with. They don't know what to say to me or do, right? And we're in West Texas. They pull over. I don't know where we are. We've driven now 30 miles or 30 minutes, I should say, from the building we were in. I have no idea where we are. They pull over. There's not even a tree. It's mesquite bush. It's, sand and dirt. And they kick me out of the truck. And they said, "There's a rattlesnake over there, and you're not getting back in the truck till you kill it." And so I looked around, and the three things that went through my head is, well, I could just start walking and try to find somewhere somehow and get home and, forget this job. Or I could sit down and cry and see if they let me back in, or I can just kill this stupid snake, right? So let's just kill the snake. So I looked at him, and he was pretty docile at the time. And so I just I looked in the back of the pickup. There's a shovel. I was like, that's got to help somehow. So I start throwing sand and rocks at this snake, and he reared up. So I took the shovel and hit him over the head with it. And then I could go over there and cut off his head. So, I mean, I'm sorry for any rattlesnake lovers, but I had to get back in the truck. So I took off his head. And then I thought, okay, how do you show the fearlessness? How do you show them not to do this to you again? Right. So I went over and I cut off his tails, his little rattlers.
Mhm.
And I went up to the window and in the most stern voice I could possibly have, and I was shaking like you can't believe how badly I was shaking, but I didn't want to let him see it. I threw the rattlers up on the dash and I go, let me in this effing truck, and they're like, oh, okay. So they let me in.
And you were how old at the time?
18.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I couldn't kill a rattlesnake today if it was laying there asleep. That's
18
remarkable.
and about 110 pounds.
18. So this was like a summer internship type thing.
Yeah, this was between the petroleum
Jeez.
engineering.
Between
yeah.
semesters or
Between
something.
Now, do you think they did that to everybody, or they just did it to
It's
you?
females. Yeah. Because I had a counterpart that came in from OSU or OU, I don't remember. And he wasn't working at the same company or with the same gang that I was working with. But no, they didn't do anything like that to him. And it was every day having to prove myself every day.
Mhm.
Like driving home and seeing that they put a tarantula in my back of my car.
Mhm.
They wanted me out, obviously, but
And so, that experience forced you to.
yeah. And then I just said, okay, you kind of reflect after that day, especially after an entire summer, you reflect and think, if I can make it through that, I can do anything. I can do anything.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
once
So
you believe that,
where you are now, at your age now, and that's not applying.
Right.
That came out wrong.
So you were 18, you're what, 24?
When you reflect on that, do you see that as, I'm glad that happened, or that was wholly unnecessary?
I'm so happy I went through what I went through. I was harassed, don't get me wrong. And I had a lot of very scary moments. But I wouldn't change it.
Sure. Which, that could have gone terribly sideways.
Mhm.
Now, let me
On
say
their part.
this. There are people in my life that I know that I would never want that to happen to. Never. It would have ruined them. You know what I mean? Just for that. But I just thought I've got to stand up and I've got to make it through this summer, and I'm going to, and I'm glad I did.
Mhm.
It's always interesting when I always feel like you said, you can't blame the companies. Like, you can't blame people for how they acted at a particular time, because they just didn't know any better sometimes. Like, it's not right.
But that
It's
was
just,
the oil
they didn't know
field
any
in
better. Right? You didn't know any
1982.
better.
Yeah.
No one taught them the right way, how to treat women. No one, they didn't have the education or the training. But you always look back and you can say, okay, was it valid? Was it not valid? Should it have happened? And whatnot. And you wouldn't dare do anything like that today.
No, it wasn't valid, and it should not have happened.
Should not have happened.
I'm
Agreed.
just glad that.
But it made you who you are.
It made me who I
Mhm.
am. Yeah, for sure.
What, maybe you can't, what job did you enjoy the most? I know the Terracon gig, we did that for about 3 years. Then you split and left me there. I don't know if you remember that. I was like, where's Leanne? Oh, she moved on. What? I got these air permits to write. I don't know what I'm doing, which also terrified me. I still get calls. How'd you come up with this number?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Don't call me, because I'll
Right.
never come up with it
what
again.
number? Yeah. So, but then you've had a number of other interesting jobs. Was one in particular,
Yeah,
and
yes,
even the one you just
definitely.
retired from, the
Yeah,
startup and stuff.
Startup was fun too.
Interesting
Yeah, I
stuff.
would say that the most fun was when and it's probably what pulled me from Terracon actually. I had a job that I moved to Denver for, and it's a company called Mark West. And they were growing so fast. This is when shale, we start horizontal drilling. You can get natural gas out of shale like crazy. We're building gas plants fast. We built 18 gas plants we built 12 gas plants in 18 months.
Mm.
Like, that's crazy. Getting air permits.
I was going to say
water
you were
permits,
responsible for all that
construction
permitting.
everything EH&S. And then you have people out there laying flow line and building these plants and the safety part of it, right? And they didn't have anybody running the environmental, the health and safety, the pipeline integrity. So I had also done pipeline
Mhm.
integrity. Actually, this is right after Northern Natural Gas is when I
Mhm.
went over there. And so they brought me in as the VP of all of the compliance. So environmental, health and safety, pipeline integrity. Then they gave me measurement, and then they gave me land, so I had a huge group, but it was so fun because just the challenge of it. We didn't have great written procedures. So while you're trying to get out ahead of the construction, you're also trying to write the procedures, and you're also trying to go back and clean up the mistakes, right? So I am building a team as fast as I can, and we're working day and night, but it was so fun because it was so challenging, and we were doing great things and getting people in line, and working with project managers going, whoa, you can't do that. Like, let's back up. At the same time, you're going back and going, you got to take that pipe out because it's the wrong pipe for that population, and so it was so crazy and so chaotic, but so rewarding because you knew you were getting them on track. It was like having a complete empty canvas, and you get to design it however you want to design it, and knowing that going forward, this is the path they're going to take, and so that was the most fun.
It just scares me just thinking about, because you're talking about, when we talk about health and safety things, and maybe I get an OSHA citation or something like that, God forbid somebody gets hurt, seriously injured or whatever, and that's weighing on you, I'm sure. But the environmental regulations, the construction permits and all of those things, the air permits, whatever, environmental impact studies and all of that stuff, those people go to jail for that stuff.
That's exactly right.
Terrifies me.
Exactly right. And we did have
Did you sleep during that time at all?
No. This is why I look like this.
Oh my God. It just sounds intense.
It was very intense. And, the Department of Justice came after us for something very minor that was ridiculous. A year of my life of just defending. And then at the end, they had to drop it because they had nothing against us. We did everything right. They went through, I think, 13,000 emails of mine, just every single document I've ever written. Just looking for stuff. And there was nothing incriminating, let's drop it. And so they finally did.
I remember that, in fact, when you guys were like shooting pigs through those lines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
They sent the SWAT team after your guys out in the field or something ridiculous.
Yeah, in ghillie suits. My poor guys that just pig lines, that's all they do. They work in the oil fields and they pig these lines to clean them out, and they open the hatch, they vent, and then they put a pig through, and they go get it at the other end and cleans it out. And it's not a real pig, obviously. It's a pipeline
right.
cleaning.
Oh, you pig lovers.
Yeah. It's a pipeline cleaning device.
I'm envisioning what that looks like coming out. I'm like,
shooting a pig down the line. Yeah.
But yeah, and we had the SWAT team in ghillie suits coming out from behind the trees, and this was in Pennsylvania, and these poor guys, and they were just like getting on their cell phone saying, "Let me call my boss." No, you can't use your cell phone. And they're like, "Okay." So we all had to come in.
Had them face down
Crazy.
in like zip tie cuffs and stuff.
I don't think it was that bad.
It just sounded horrible.
It was horrible for those poor guys. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
So you made a comment before we started recording, or I think before we started recording. Maybe it'll be in the when I'm clearing my throat or something. But about leadership and about teaching leadership, promoting within and maybe promoting the wrong people.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And so for a short minute, I left oil and gas and went into manufacturing. And I thought, I need to see something other than oil and gas. And this is why I went to Chicago. So I went to Chicago and I worked for a manufacturing company, and I loved it. It was fun. It was great to get out of oil and gas for a while, see the other side of the world. But you notice that as they're promoting people, they're promoting the really, really good workers, the people that are on time and work hard and get some good stuff done, and they've got a brain. So that's who they're promoting. And I kind of remember thinking, this is kind of like being in a hospital or medical world where you have a great doctor and they think, oh, you need to go to admin and
run the hospital.
And run the
hospital. And it's like, well, one, do they have the skills for that? Two, you're taking away one of the best doctors that these patients really need to see, right? And so it reminded me of that on a different scale. And so as I see this happening and, us trying to get a safety culture into this manufacturing world, I realized that without leadership training, there's no way we're going to get a good safety culture. There's just no way, because, you have safety coming from top down. You have safety coming from bottom up. And it's those middle managers that make or break safety. They just make or break it. Because if they're not spreading the word down of what needs to be done, or listening to their people to, hey, we need a change in procedure or whatever, there's no way that we're going to
Mhm.
win. There's just no way we're going to get people hurt. So that's when I just said, okay, time out. Let me put together leadership training and give these people and show them that they're empowered, show them how to be a leader. And so we did like 2 weeks of leadership training, 1 week, well, actually 4 weeks, 1 week. And then, a month or two goes by, another week, month or two goes by, another week. And we got people through 4 weeks of leadership training, and our safety numbers improved dramatically because then they felt empowered. And I think a good leader really can identify, cares, figures out how to do things differently, steps in, stops work when need be, et cetera. And a poor leader, and I shouldn't say really a poor leader, but one who doesn't feel as confident as that, just looks the other way, right? Because they don't want to get involved. I mean, this person who's doing something wrong was their coworker just, a week ago.
Right.
And now I'm his boss. And, so that's tough. So, so I put together a bunch of leadership training, and it really, really helped the culture.
How did you guys transition? One of the things we always talk about is traditionally safety was always the add-on program. It's Doug in the corner and boss going, Doug, are we good? Yep, we're good. All right, get back to work, right? Just whatever we got to do to stay working and continuing to produce in revenue. And our approach has always been, the safety person has to be a leader in the company. It can't just be the person in the corner making sure the posters are up and then everybody giving a thumbs up or we have an incident or no incidents for 30 days, whatever the tracker is we have up on the door. How did you guys bridge that gap? I understand the leadership training at all levels. How did you pull the safety person into a leadership role, or were you even able to at that point?
Yeah, we were. I've been in companies where it is the thumbs up, thumbs down, here are the numbers, and that does not ever work. So I think in those situations, what I did was all you have to do is put the financial numbers. If they, it's like trying to reach people. You have to reach them what hurts or what they are excited about or whatever, right? You have to know who you're talking to. So in a couple instances, I know it's financial issues, and I know what's going to get them excited. And so you put together the numbers of workers' comp and of man days out and of hard to hire people because, we've got a bad safety record, et cetera, et cetera. And you throw that out at them and you show them what could be done and how much they could save. That's an easy win when you can put the numbers together. That's an easy win.
To speak their language.
That's something he talks about all the time is depending on who you're communicating to, they want to hear something different.
Right.
They care differently about the same subject matter, but their perspective is different, which is really interesting.
Right. And, that's funny you say that because in my leadership training, I always talk about that. I'm a mom and have 2 kids, a male and a female. Male was firstborn. When I tried to discipline him as a kid, and this is where I think I learned a lot of leadership skills because when I disciplined him as a kid, he was so sensitive that all I had to do was look at him and show a sign of disappointment. And I mean, he put himself in timeout and he was bawling and he just felt so badly. That's all I had to do. When then my daughter comes along and she wouldn't budge. She didn't care what I felt. She didn't care. She just was going to move on, and so it took a lot more disciplining to her, a lot more talking and being angry and, showing her what she did and all that in order for her to change her behavior. Right. And so just through that, I mean, and they're both my blood, but they have such different personalities that just through that, you realize in talking with executives or talking to line plant workers, you have to know who they are and what's going to get them to change their behaviors.
That makes me feel good because I have a 14-year-old daughter and I haven't figured it out yet.
right. Yeah, you guys can do a little briefing on that.
Wrap my head around it at all.
He's in the 14, 10-year-old phase that we've been through, although I don't have a daughter, but as you said, employees are very much like that. And I think it's easy to equate parenting to leading / managing, I think those are skills that people ignore. They have those skills, or maybe they don't. Maybe they don't do well as parents, but it's very similar in my opinion.
It is. And when you can take the skills you've learned from parenting into the workforce and go, oh, okay. So, I used to, back at Mark West, I had staff meetings and I knew that one person who was going to walk in is going to hijack my meeting. She just is. She's just going to hijack it. She needed some attention, right? So every time she walked in, I would say, oh, hey, wow, I love that outfit, or I love those shoes, or what you did yesterday was great. Thanks for doing that. And then it was all good, right?
Mhm.
And then another one, every time he walked in, I had to go, I love you so much. And he would say, I love you too. And then he was all good, right? So you just have to know your people to get them all working at 100% and together.
But it's interesting that you would give them that affirmation before the meeting started so they didn't derail the meeting.
Right.
That's interesting.
Right.
I like that.
Right.
concept.
And even, sitting at the executive table, knowing this is my idea, but there's a couple people in there that have to have it their idea. So you just keep feeding. You just keep feeding little hints. Well, what something like this, or if we do something like A, and if we do something like B, and if we do something like C, and then they get the big picture and they're like, I got it. Here's what we do. And you walk out with a big smile on your face. You're like, well, I won.
Yeah. But that is the battle.
And at the end of the day, it's just whatever you got to do to get the job done and keep the train moving. And it's just classic motivation. Some people just need to feel like they're on the team.
Yeah.
And some people need to be in charge of something. So you just put them in charge of anything.
Yeah.
And they're cool.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, whatever.
That's exactly
you're in charge of paper towels, Doug. Go for it. And it's like, but the point is, it's like you have to. There's a motive behind how they're acting,
right?
And as soon as you tap into that, it just diffuses everything
and
quickly.
Don't you find that same thing with like going into a company and changing the culture, the safety culture? That's turning around a huge ship. And if you think about that, in fact, I was just learning about this. Like, turning around a huge ship takes an enormous rudder. Well, how are we going to move that rudder? It's a tiny little rudder that moves that big rudder, right? So the little tiny things are super important and to turn that ship around. And so some people need to see graphic pictures of what could happen. That's how they learn. And that's why they're
driver's ed approach.
Yes, exactly. That's why they're never going to put their hand in there even for a split second, because that picture is going to come up in their mind before they do that. Some just need to be trained, and others, they want to read about it, stuff like that. So that is what I felt like when we were changing the culture around in the manufacturing. It was a lot of the little things and a lot of how do these people learn? How do you take what I say cowboy, even though that's a negative term and I don't mean that, but some cowboys that are just like going to do their own thing no matter what anybody says. I don't need to follow procedures. What if we gave them some accountability, and then, you see them kind of start coming back around.
Make it their program.
Yes.
Now it's yours.
Yes, exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, having been in organizations where you're having to turn the ship, we'll get questions. We'll talk to safety councils and whatnot. I always get the question, well, Aaron, how long is this going to take? And I'm always like, hey, man, you've got 50 years of entrenchment you're trying to fix. It's not going to be overnight.
Right.
How would you answer? Look, it's going to take time. I can't give you a timeline, but let's just think about how long it's been this way.
Right.
And you want it fixed yesterday. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, I've had that question too. And I always say, okay, so I'm going to put together the timeline and you can help fill in the dates, right? But you put in the metrics. Like, I want to have monthly all employee meetings, and you, Mr. President, need to give the safety talk. So when do we get to start that? And then, the next one is, I've got this huge safety training calendar. When are you, Mr. President, going to allow me to have an hour a week with every single employee?
Right.
Stuff like that. And just put together the whole timeline.
Milestones.
Milestones. And we can get here and we can get there and we can get there. But fill in the dates, can I do all of this in the next 6 months? Or are you going to make me, wait it out because of production and everything that they're all concerned about,
Which is valid. I get
Totally
it.
valid.
The company doesn't exist if you're not
Totally
producing.
valid. I did hear though, the safety culture part of it. I don't know if it was Simon Sinek or what, but it just so resonated with me in the safety side of things, is that the safety culture can be defined as the most extraordinary or most out there behavior that's allowed. Like the worst behavior allowed, that defines your safety culture. So when you start not allowing those and bringing them back in and holding people accountable and follow the policies and procedures and don't take the shortcuts and all of that, and you start bringing it back in, I think that's when like that ship gets to turn a little bit.
Yeah, whatever the worst behavior is you permit is what you're going to get ultimately.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
if you allow
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
deviation.
Which goes back to your cowboy comment. You know, there's always that one person, or usually it's the senior, the guy or the girl that's been there 25 years, and you'll come out and say, okay, we're going to do this, and they all turn and look at that person like, are we really going to do this?
Yes, yes, that happens all the time.
Because if they're not going to do it, then the rest of us aren't going to do it.
Yep. Yep.
It's interesting.
And when you can win that person over, that cowboy, man, you have just made your life so much easier. That's who I focus in on. Like the person they all look to, I'm like zooming in on that one and going, okay,
There's my target.
there's my
Mhm.
target.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've had other people that are high performers say that same thing. You want to identify that problem child and then somehow enlist them,
Right.
get them on your side, either through empowerment or whatever, give them a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Most
Yeah,
people are
even, like,
afraid of that person. Most people avoid that person.
That's exactly right. They're too afraid to come head on with that person. But, we were instilling technology that was going to feel a little big brother, like maybe a little bit intrusive on their rights, or their employment or whatever. And that's exactly who I looked at. I was like, we need that cowboy to be the first one that says, I want to step up and do this, And
Can
sure
you talk
enough,
a little
the
about
second-
technology and how, you've been doing this quite a long time.
Forever.
Yeah, since you were 14 or something. So how have you utilized technology effectively? Have you been able to incorporate technology?
We
in a
have.
useful way?
There's technology that now almost everybody has that we instilled,
Mhm.
The easy one is like the GPS in the cars and I'm blanking the geotab, right? Geotab in the vehicles. It helped us tremendously when we got that instilled because we know if they're wearing a seatbelt, we know harsh cornering, we know heavy braking, we know, so many things. And so we put together, hey, you get your own score every week, and everybody that gets in 95 and above goes in a raffle, and you get, $100 on your check. So you want to drive correctly.
Yeah,
right?
be conscious of this.
Be conscious of this, as well as you can point out. Really, driving is one of the most hazardous things we do here, and
Definitely.
in a lot of jobs. And they were in the trucks all the time. That was their job. So once we could establish what their driving habits were, then we could coach. You know what? You're getting a really low score. We're worried about you. We need to keep you safe. Let me coach you, blah, blah, blah. And if they got 3 weeks in a row, then, you either have to have somebody drive with you or we can't have you because you're a hazard, So there's that
That's interesting.
technology, which really helped us tremendously. But I know a lot of companies have that now. But then there's this other one that I thought was, it was awesome. I think it's called Ready Check. And, now with weed or pot being legal in so many states, how do you ensure that your employees aren't under the influence when they come into work? Right?
Operating that heavy equipment. Right.
Right. Because your testing is, they could test positive, and it was, 3 weeks ago on a Saturday night, that they used pot. So that one was kind of a head scratcher. And we came upon this company that I thought it was brilliant until we get the testing to tell us when they did, when this person smoked weed or ate an edible or whatever. Until we get that, we need something else in plan, So our plan was this company who came up with an iPad type application of which they use for kids in high school or kids in college for concussions. So pre any concussion, they have to do like 4 different tests, and you do them quickly, and you have to match things and colors and shapes and that. And you get, after you do it maybe 10 times, you're in a normal bandwidth, right? So you're at this normal for this age, for, this, you are right here, you're right in the normality. But if you're under the influence, you're not in that normality anymore. So every day when you come in, you clock in, you pick up your iPad, you do your 4 tests, and you move on. However, if you don't pass, meaning you're not in your normal bandwidth, I got notified, right? So like somebody on the safety team gets notified, hey, we had somebody not do it. So you go out and tap them and you go, just try it one more time. It just, you're off, you never know. Maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe there could fought with their spouse. Maybe,
Sure.
You don't know what's occupying their mind. So you kind of calm them down and you, talk them through it, and then they get to try it again. Usually then they pass. But if they don't, then you go, you know what? Gosh, dang it. I'm going to have to go. It's his reasonable suspicion. I'm going to have to take you in for a drug test. And then, you know what? If it shows positive, even though it was 3 weeks ago last Saturday, you can't do anything about it except follow your drug and alcohol policy. What
does your policy then dictate at that point? They just don't drive for the day, or is that like an automatic termination type thing? Or, I'm assuming this is the one that they found a little bit intrusive.
Yes. This one was intrusive.
Because this is kind of an interesting.
Yeah, right. We really had great people working there, great people. And so maybe only once or twice did we have this. And so our drug policy was once and you're out. So yeah, because they're operating, they could cut an arm off in a split second, kind of thing. So we had to take every precaution.
So that was a useful program.
So useful. I thought it was so cool. And it was fun. It was kind of fun to go out there and do it and try to beat your score. And
I know that as you said, they do that in high school sports for concussion protocol, things like that. Kent used to get concussed every week. My oldest son,
skateboarder.
He was the skateboarder who probably
bouncing
lived
off a tree,
semi-concussed state his entire life, probably, but he had a few and he could not pass. They held him out for 2 or 3 weeks before he could go back. And so I think there is some validity to the testing. It's obvious that when you're outside of that norm, that you've established that there's something going on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Pot,
so
cough syrup,
cool.
whatever it is. Codeine cough syrup or whatever. But that's interesting. I'm really fascinated by the evolution of technology in what we do, because you are retired. I someday hope to retire, but I think I am seeing technologies come into the profession, and I think some of them are actually useful. Some of them are just fluff,
Yeah, right.
But some of them are going to be kind of useful.
Yes.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way to go here and now, because there's still training needs. There's still communication needs. If something happens, let's let the whole company know quickly so that, we can put some processes in place, et cetera. But the technology and making it fun is so beyond what we thought of in the 80s, but like even putting together a game so that when you come in and you have to, or a visitor comes in and you need to give them the whole spiel, about here's our safety and here's our policies and here's what you have to, what you can do and can't do, to put it in a game and give them an iPad, and then they know it. Instead they're, listening, going, really?
PowerPoint, click.
Yeah.
Right.
Click.
Yeah.
Oh,
or even a video you have to watch while you're in the lobby, and you're like,
I've done that many times.
I'm not.
I was listening to somebody talk about virtual reality and doing a lot of training with VR, so you can actually, like, if you're doing some high criticality process or something, you can actually do it in 3D before you go out and do it in reality.
Yeah.
That sounds
I think
cool.
that's cool. And as being Air Force or whatever, my son Brett, who's in the Air Force, they have so many sims that is just that. They sit and they fly and they land and they do whatever they do in their jets in a simulator, and you have to pass, hundreds of simulator tests to keep moving on.
Before
right?
you actually.
Well, while you are also. You're also doing the real flights, but then you've got a sim, and then you go a real flight, and then you have a sim, and and it's just it's amazing. And why we're not bringing that into the either manufacturing or oil and gas or whatever. It's
I think it kind of lags, but I think it's fantastic.
Well, there's a cost piece too. The government has the blank check, and it's a proficiency piece. Like, it's much cheaper to sit in a sim than fly the actual plane. So you can augment proficiency with the simulations in the VR, and not spend $1 bazillion flying the jet every day.
Technology of being able to sit in that sim is crazy.
It's amazing.
Have you been in it?
I have.
Have you been allowed to get it?
I crashed every time.
There are those technologies, it slowly makes its way out, once it gets developed. And I know, like, NASCAR starting to use some of that technologies because they have sims, and they get more track time without having to
and they got
wreck
a lot
cars.
of dough too.
And they get a lot of money.
But don't you think as like VR comes around, it's going to get less and less and less expensive? And I
just like anything else,
right? And I think that we should be looking at this stuff now, as far as
I think progressive-minded companies would be using that now, because it is available to some degree.
Mhm.
Interesting.
I think, the initial barrier to entry, that price tags, what scares a lot of companies. It's like, okay, where are we going to spend our money? Especially in the economy right now. Like
Right.
you and I both know that when the economy's tight, what gets cut first? Training gets
Yep.
cut first.
Yep.
Always.
Isn't that
It
sad?
doesn't make
That's
money.
too
It's
bad.
not a revenue generating
Mhm.
source. So, and that's unfortunate. And then, the high price tag of technology is scary anyway. So it's like, okay, you're always fighting that.
Mhm.
But it does take a company willing to spend a little money and to realize now you're going to get ahead. Like you have to look.
You have to go
You
long
can't be
game.
short-sighted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one to incorporate that stuff.
Mhm.
I like that. I don't even have any idea what time it is. We got plenty of time. What time? I don't know. I mean, you are somewhat removing yourself from the day-to-day practice of EHS management. You might dabble a little bit in some EHS
Yeah.
leadership consulting,
Mhm.
which I think is fantastic because I know that pulling that amount of experience out of the workplace is really, difficult. So you'll have to
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah. Well, I will have to do something.
But you've
No,
also
that's what I'm really looking forward to is just being able to, speak
Mhm.
or train or just,
Coach-
find that
coach
Yeah,
leaders. I mean, that's what
right,
Aaron does.
Right.
I set it up. He goes and does the coaching. I think that is really a critical and oftentimes missing piece. You alluded to it. You talk about it all the time. We assign people these different positions of authority, and the frontline supervisors are pulled in so many different directions,
Yes.
and they're not really equipped to be leaders.
Right.
You know,
Exactly right.
and so I think that is the missing piece of most of this.
Yeah. Although I will say when I was at the manufacturing and I said, okay, stop, everybody stop. We're promoting these people. We're setting them up for failure is what we're
Right.
doing because
Mhm.
we're not training them and we're not
100%.
telling them how to do this job, etc. So I stopped everything and I was able to get my 4 weeks of training of leadership, etc. in. And so then, no good deed goes unpunished. So then they gave me HR.
Sure.
Right. Of course they did.
You know what?
Oh, the
Why don't you
worst.
have HR? Oh, okay.
Because why not?
That's totally the worst. That's
I find funny, like you go on LinkedIn and there's people out there championing themselves as I train corporate leaders, I coach corporate leaders. And it's so funny because the focus always seems to be the top level, the E-suite. And, I help executives be better versions of themselves and lead companies. And nobody seems to focus on that mid-level management. And and really that's where the money is. And that's where you make or break a company. And
Yeah.
it always seems like the focus is up here. And all these people get all this great training. And because that's the sexy stuff, I want to train the COOs and the CEOs, but nobody wants to seem to train the frontline supervisors.
Mhm.
They don't want to get down in the weeds amongst the peasants
Exactly.
and give them the training, which is where all the work's being done.
Mhm.
Exactly. And those COOs, no matter how much you train the CEO, COO, it's not getting to
Right.
the people that need to have it.
Right. I think, we have talked about that. And I think the future is some type of frontline supervisor boot camp where you equip them, in a company specific fashion. You can equip them not only to be managers, but leaders as well. They need to have certain skills to be able to manage, but they definitely need to have skills in order to lead and in order to make this safety and health thing that we do effective.
Yep.
You mentioned you were reading. Are you reading something what have you been reading lately? Do you read stuff professionally or are you off that now?
I've just read an entire book on enterprise risk management, which I'm not going to suggest to anybody. But
Just out of curiosity or?
No, because in my past job, I was VP of risk. So I had
Mhm.
environmental health and safety plus all the risks. So setting up an environmental risk management system,
Mhm.
and starting from ground up. So I just wanted to make sure we were going in the right direction.
Mhm.
So I did read that, but I'm just.
And did it have any helpful information
Oh yeah.
in it? It was
great.
useful.
It was really great.
It
Yeah,
was
it was helpful. Very helpful to see how other companies did things and what failed and what worked and that kind of stuff. So it was
Mhm.
it was good. But honestly, I'm a podcast junkie. Like I learn almost everything on podcasts anymore
Mhm.
today.
I do too.
I love them.
I
they're
drive a
very
lot and I
entertaining.
listen to podcasts all the
Yes,
time.
me too.
I wanted to ask a question if I could. You mentioned earlier the job you had where it was just chaotic and you never slept. Teaching at the university, I'll get our students, they graduate, they got this diploma, they see somebody like you, I'm like, that's where I'm going to be. But they have this twisted reality that they're going to get there in 5 years. And they don't understand. They see someone like you and go, that's where I want to go, but they don't see the 90 hours a week
Yes.
behind it. And how do you explain that? Like, it's easy for me to say, hey, you got to shut up and color for a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear that. Well,
Yeah.
I have a degree and I should have upward mobility. And I'm like, those words shouldn't come out of your mouth for 5 years.
Right.
But, we see in the job market, job hopping is quite common now.
Right now,
Well,
for sure.
if I don't get the promotion I want, or I don't see upward mobility, I'm moving. And it's like, okay, well, if you're not willing to invest in the company, how are they supposed to invest in you? And then you see someone like you say, I know I didn't sleep for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like that level of work needs to go into
Mm-hmm.
those positions, but nobody wants to really talk about that, or, they like the idea of being there, but doing what it takes to get there is a different reality.
Right. So I think there's two things in there that we really all need to learn from. And one is, while you're in college, there isn't anybody like you that I had anyway saying, hey, going from college and going to the real world is difficult. It's very difficult. You might hate your first job. It's not going to be what you expect. You don't get to be up there right away. So let's have a little bit of a discussion like that in school and talk to our students about this, right? Yesterday, I heard this from my daughter. And so I have so many friends who now have kids who've just left college, went into their first job, and they hate it. So let's have that discussion. Second of all, when you go into that job, why don't we have great leaders who make it fun and make it exciting and make it energetic to where these kids do want to stick around for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Because not only are they getting paid well, they have a job where they're enjoying it. They like getting up in the morning and coming in. They're challenged. They're getting rewarded. They're, just going back to the whole, being a mother and all of that and learning who your kids are. There's a lot of kids out there that need rewarding every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Verbally.
Right.
Or with a parking place, whatever. But know who they are and be a good leader and get these people excited to come in and work for you and stick around, because you can show them the vision. I think a lot of leaders don't show the vision of where we're going and where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I need you. And this is why this little thing you're working on is so important to this company.
Yeah, I think that's a generational. There's more generations in the workforce than ever right now. And it's a generational, even the military's changed from when I first started to probably when your son is now.
Yeah.
When I first got in, it was salute smartly and soldier on and don't question anything. And now to your point, it's, well, let's explain the why. And if I'm not before it was, if you're not checking in with somebody, that meant everything was fine. And now if you're not checking in with them, now it's like something's wrong. Because I'm not talking to them every day. And, our generation going into the workforce, it was, well, you got your paycheck. That's your reward. You're here to work. And it's really different now. And I think that's a lot of leaders are struggling with that aspect because they weren't brought up that way.
Absolutely.
Now they're having a 180.
Absolutely. I will say I was at this, some symposium or networking deal that was one that I was a keynote speaker. So I listened to one of the talks, and it was 2 female millennials who came in and explained what their generation is about. And I know now we're even past the millennials and going on, to the next generation. But it was the most interesting and eye-opening talk I've ever heard in my life. Because they just brought up things like, we're not ruining the diamond industry. We don't have the money. We're paying back student loans. The average student, millennial student that came out of college owes like $38,000. The average owes $38,000. Yeah, we're living with our parents for that reason. Stuff like that you're just like, and that was just like 3 of 100 things they were talking about, but it was so eye-opening, and it made me such a better leader because now I get it. I understand these people, and it's not the same generation I grew up in. I watched my dad work, 15 hours a day and never bitched and brought home a paycheck and raised a huge family, and, it was awesome. But you didn't jump ship, you just dug through as far as you could go,
and hope the pension was there.
Yeah.
Still there.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. So anyway, it just was really eye-opening. But yeah, every generation is just a little bit different. And every generation brings a lot to the table, brings a lot. So, you know,
we just need to know how to tap into
we
that,
need to know how to
probably.
tap in, and they're
Yeah.
smart. I mean, they are
Yeah.
really, really smart.
I know that both of my boys are smarter than me. Your kids are
Way smarter than me.
remarkable. Your kids are going to be that. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so, but they need to be led differently than we were. You know, get your ass to work and shut up was kind of the mantra that I was raised under.
Yep.
But, you know, so
what do you feel about?
We're rolling up on a hard stop here, man. I know there's another group. So you're going to have to come back.
Oh,
I know you'll drive from here to back to Chicago to Denver in this big kind of this boomerang shaped travel pattern. So we are up against time, and I know there's another group coming.
Don't we have seniority at this point?
You would think so, man. We have been here a long time, but this has been fascinating, and I would love it if you could come back sometime.
Oh, I would so
if you're going to pass through town again, let us know, and you know, Aaron can ask his question that he was formulating as we were
Write
going.
it down so that we're sure to get it.
Yes, fantastic. This has been really a treat and fascinating stuff. And thank you for what you taught me. I don't actually exhibit any of those traits like tenacity, fearlessness, those kind of things, but I got to see them and what they looked like. And so I recognize them when I see them now. So
once the camera stops, I want to find out what Doug was like as an employee.
Oh, hardworking, dedicated, usually under my desk. So have a safe trip.
Thanks.
It's great to see you.
So great to see you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Later.